Hello, everyone, and welcome back. You found yourself on this side of Fuck Calories podcast. I'm Dr. Soleil. That's Dr. Sarah. And today we are going to mention some of our favorite high protein, maybe hacks, meals, things like that. We've had a couple of questions come our way from our previous episodes asking, how do I increase my protein? I've been eating this certain way for a couple of years. So, one of the first places I like to start is breakfast because a lot of people are eating carb heavy breakfast, right? When you start thinking about the typical or standard American breakfast, it's going to be pancakes and waffles and bagels and muffins and where's
Cereal.
my protein, right? So Dr. Sarah, do you have any thoughts about breakfast in general or how we can spice things up and how do we start our day with increasing our protein?
Absolutely. So I think one of the things that everyone goes to is eggs. And yes, eggs absolutely do have high protein, and we will talk about some hacks with those. But I just want to say up front that Dr. Soleil has her life more together than I do. And she's going to talk about some really amazing things that you can do for breakfast. I don't have my shit together. And so a very common, very easy breakfast for me, I need something that I can grab and go. I don't have I have, hit the snooze button 15 times, and by the time I finally get up, I am in a hurry.
Yep.
So a very common breakfast for me is Oikyo. So there are many different brands, but my personal favorite is the berry flavored Oikyo. I don't even know if I'm saying that correctly, but the Greek yogurt that is berry
Yeah.
flavored. It is so friggin' delicious.
Hmm.
They have ones that have 20 grams of protein that do have a little bit of carbs and fat and stuff. And then they also have a zero version, which only has 15 grams of protein. I actually find that I like the flavor better of the zero one that only has 15. But I think 15 is a great start to the morning. If you add that with, a protein shake, or if you have two of them, I mean, you are at your 30 for the first third of your day. I mean, that is an awesome amount of protein. So that is a very common go-to for me. And then I'm gonna throw it over to you, and I'll kind of put in some input as we go with some things that you can also make.
Yeah, so I love adding, I think I'm also not as well prepared in the morning, so I like to prep, right? And
Yeah.
so in the morning, I love my iced coffee, decaf coffee, that kind of stuff because it still has some stimulants, but I'm not overstimulated with the caffeine, but I just love the taste of it and it's kind of my typical go-to. So I love throwing in collagen powder into my iced coffee and I blend it, and that's an extra 20 grams right there because I'm sipping on it on my way to work. I love grab and go. Those yogurts you're talking about, Greek yogurts are fabulous. I'm also a huge fan of cottage cheese, right? So half a cup of cottage cheese is about 12 and a half grams of protein. And so if you're at home and you want the whole cup of cottage cheese, that's 25 grams just by itself. It's crazy.
Yeah.
On the weekends when I have a kind of like an easy morning and I have no place to go, that's when I start experimenting with my eggs, right? And do I want to make an omelet or do I want my leftover steak that I had for dinner before and now I'm having steak and eggs? Do I want to throw kind of like a kitchen sink omelet together and I'll throw that steak in or I'll add some whatever's in my refrigerator, right? Can be
Yeah.
in. Another thing I know we talked about before recording are those egg bites. So when I
Yes.
was cruising Pinterest, I came across making little egg bites in the muffin tins, right?
And
And so
so what are
you,
you talking about? If anyone who doesn't know, I don't
yes,
know what rock you've been living under, but Starbucks has these little egg bites. They're basically muffins, but they're eggs and they have stuff in them and they're delicious, but they are
yes.
a zillion dollars and they have actually some starch and some carbs in them. Anyway, take it
Yes,
away.
so I like making my own because it's so much less expensive and I get to put some yumminess in there that, right? And I just don't like going to Starbucks, right? I'm not paying for that crazy amount of stuff in my
Yeah.
life because I'm just super, I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm trying to hack my way through life. So I am making in a big bowl, scrambling eggs, putting in spinach, maybe some mushrooms, you could even put in pureed cottage cheese, right? I know, Sarah, you were talking about how that's a tip to increase your protein, but also make the eggs really creamy and more fluffy, etc. And then I'm probably going to throw in some sausage or, whatever. I'm then pouring this egg mixture into the individual tins and I have them lined. I use silicone linings because they're super easy and then, wash and reusable. But You then bake them either in a small little toaster oven or a big oven, or, however you want to do this. I know some people even do it in their air fryer. But now you have 12 to 18, depending on how many muffin tins you have, or little pans, little egg bites. And so they're bite size
Mm,
omelets to go. So
yeah.
you make a huge batch, you then store them in the fridge, and some people even will do a deep freeze if they want to make like massive amounts. You take 2 out, and now you're ready to go. Now, I prefer to pop them either in the toaster oven or the microwave, just to like heat them up a bit. I know a ton of people that have just gotten used to eating them cold. Do your own, right? I know. I was like, okay,
You
I don't
do.
know about eating cold eggs, but like, basically, if you're on the go and you're like, listen, my whole family's having a hard time getting into the car, that's when I'm thinking, right, the night before, what can I have prepped? What can I throw in and reheat? And how can I get more protein in my coffee? Because I always have coffee. Or how do I increase, right, my protein and start off the day with higher proteins? Because if our goal is 100 grams of protein a day, it's really easy to get behind if you're
Yeah.
not consciously making those decisions first thing in the morning, right?
Kind of going back to the coffee thing, I am not a huge I am let me back up. I'm not a huge I hate black coffee.
Mm,
Although I have gotten away from my Starbucks habit, I was one of those people that got on the bandwagon and became a coffee drinker because of all the frou-frou shit from Starbucks, and it's like not really Starbucks, or it's not really coffee, it's like a candy bar in a
yeah.
liquid form.
Yep.
So I don't love the taste of coffee by itself, but I do really love mochas. And I
Mm,
found that using the Premier chocolate, I think the Premier chocolate is like too sweet. I can't tolerate it by itself.
mm,
But oh, and also Fairlife has a caramel version that is also really fantastic for this.
mm.
It is like a little bit too sweet to drink, but it makes an amazing mocha if you
Yes.
put it in in like black coffee. So you take your
Yes.
black coffee, which has like you know no calories, no fat or anything, and instead of putting in creamers and sweeteners and a bunch of coffee syrup or toffee syrup and everything else, you just use like a protein shake that is one of these flavored that has 30 grams of protein or however much you end up using, and it's like a really powerful high protein punch to get that like fix that you were gonna otherwise have. And plus, making it home is cheaper.
Yes.
But going back to the eggs and the cottage cheese, sorry, I'm like rambling here. I hate cottage cheese. It like really grosses me out. It's like a texture thing.
Hmm.
So I cannot stand cottage cheese. But I found that if you whip it, like use it in your either blender or little frother thingy,
Processor. Mhm.
exactly. You like it will, if you do that with eggs and then you make your eggs either scrambled or fried or however you like them, it makes the egg like really fluffy. And
Mhm.
like Dr. Slay was saying, it adds 12 grams of protein if you use a half a cup. And so each egg has 6 grams of protein. And
Mhm.
so like instead of like, so if I wanted to get say 18 grams of protein or whatever, I could do like one egg, or I could do two eggs, or I could do, let me say, I could do three eggs, but three
Mhm.
eggs turns into like a really high volume. And it's just like hard for me to eat that many eggs because like I like eggs, but I don't like crave eggs. That's like three eggs is a lot.
Yeah.
Like, I just like, I'm, like halfway through, I'm like, I want something else,
Mhm.
like,
Mhm.
but what I found is that if you actually use cottage cheese and you like whip it up and make them really fluffy, the eggs get really, really light and fluffy and they're like creamy and they have like this amazing, beautiful texture. But also you increase the protein density. So you not are eating like, oh, so many eggs.
Mhm.
And so I found that that was like a really cool hack for me. I don't usually do it for breakfast. I actually make that for dinner a lot,
Mhm.
because I can't get my shit together in the mornings. So that is like something else that I like to do with eggs to kind of increase the protein density and using that cottage cheese.
Absolutely. And I am so sorry you don't like cottage cheese, because I love it. It's so yummy. And
Ugh.
that's, I was like, this is so easy for me. But
Yeah.
a lot of people are also dairy free, right? And so if
Yeah.
you are,
I
I
can't.
don't do that. Yeah,
Yeah.
don't make yourself sick. Don't add that to your eggs. But um other tips and tricks is I'm a huge fan of leftovers. And so when I'm eating dinner, I will take whatever leftovers and plan probably for the next morning to have that. and it tends to be higher in protein.
Yeah.
And then I just throw in, whatever. Because a lot of this, what we call breakfast food, is just they're just too
Marketing.
carb heavy, right? And it's
Yeah.
crazy, and it's a bunch of carbs and a bunch of sugar, and I'm like, that just starts me down the wrong path
Yeah.
of, and then I'm starting to crave carbs, and then that's all I want, and then I'm spiking my blood sugar, and then I'm dropping again, and it's just a whole big mess. So, um,
And interestingly, kind of going with that, most people's circadian rhythm and like the rhythm of their hormones, they're actually slightly more insulin resistance in the morning
hmm,
versus at the end of the day. And so if, I tend to eat low carb, but if you're going to have carbs, it's better to do it in the mid afternoon or with your dinner than to
mhm.
do it first thing in the morning.
Oh, interesting. And see,
Yeah.
yeah, we are very carb heavy in America, and then
Yeah.
we tend to
Yeah.
add our protein later. But um, okay, so let's chat about the rest of the day. So
Yeah.
I'm going to keep talking about eggs just for 2 seconds, because one of my favorite things to do is hard boil eggs, because they're the super fast, easiest way to take protein with me, right?
Agree.
And then I just crack it and I eat it wherever I'm at. I also use it as a vehicle to get electrolytes into my body, because I'm
Yeah.
obsessed with adding tons of salt, right, to
Salt to
it.
them. Yes, I
Um,
agree.
because they're delicious. But when I start getting snacky, I know I need to go for protein, as opposed to, again,
Yeah.
a carb heavy snack like crackers or chips, or anything like that. Just for my metabolism and the way that it's working. So love boiled eggs. So other snacks, though, I'm a huge lover of beef jerky. What are your thoughts on beef jerky?
I think beef jerky is awesome for people that like it. I do not like the taste of any jerkies. It's like that taste I don't
Hard.
really like. Yeah.
Mhm.
Um I would caution people to really look at the ingredient list because there are some
Okay.
amazing jerkies out there. There are some really shitty jerkies out
Yep.
there. That can have lots of nitrates and other terrible shit for
And
you.
tons of
Um,
sugar. Like,
yeah.
people will pour sugar on
Yeah.
their beef
Yeah.
jerky. It's crazy.
And you
So
wouldn't
don't,
imagine. Yeah. So
again,
look at
don't do
the
that.
ingredients and get a good one. And if you love it, amazing.
Mhm. Um, if I'm starting to think about lunches that are easy to do, um, I love a tuna salad,
Yeah.
right? And so a
Yeah.
can of tuna is going to get you close to, depending on how big your can is, close to 30 grams
Yeah.
of protein
Yeah.
by itself. And it's
Yeah.
insane. And then I'm going to add and dress it up however you want. And I might even sneak in another boiled egg into that. And then I'm eating it with slices of cucumber, or do I want crackers? Do I want to introduce those carbs right into
Yeah.
that afternoon lunch session? I'm going to have my veggies on the side, maybe eat some the crudité, carrots or anything like that, and kind of use the tuna
Yeah.
as like a dip kind of thing.
Yeah.
But now I'm getting great sources of the vitamins and fiber, as well as high protein.
Absolutely. And if you want something that's like a cracker, but you don't want the extra carbs, there are, depending on what kind of a specialty grocery store you have around you, there are some really, really fantastic um, crackers that are made. I'm not going to mention any brands here, but people can find them that are made from like flaxseed that have like different seeds and have lots of omega-3s in them that are have a really fantastic nutrition profile, and they tend to be much lower in carbs than like a traditional like flour based cracker.
Hmm.
So if you, because that's something that I really like, if you want that cracker feel with whatever dip you have, or if you're doing the tuna, it's a really really fantastic go-to. So just go down your specialty aisle in your grocery. It's often with like the gluten-free type stuff because they happen to be gluten-free. That's not the reason why I'm grabbing them, um, but I that's like another really fantastic option. Something
Absolutely.
else that I have gotten obsessed with recently is so I think probably the audience knows this about me, but I have yo-yoed my entire life with diets, including like in my childhood. We had a very restrictive, everyone in my family is obese. And so my parents, God love them, they tried. They did a really poor job. Um, but we had a very restricted upbringing. And so my mom used to occasionally make chili rellenos. And I did not realize that they are typically, when you get them at a restaurant, egg battered and fried.
Yes.
And I have always had chili rellenos that are grilled and I actually prefer them that way. I think they're delicious because I feel like obviously I like fried shit, but they like get soggy and stuff and like
Mhm,
that
mhm.
texture on the of the egg of the fried on that chili relleno like
That
kind of
batter,
grosses me
yeah.
out. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
weird. So anyway, one thing that I have gotten really into I should as a caveat, I do not like turkey. This episode is really making me sound like a picky eater, and I am embarrassed by this. It's true. But, so anyway, I do not like turkey,
Mm.
but I recently discovered that if you and I don't like turkey in any form. I don't like ground turkey. But it turns out if you use ground turkey and if you have a packet of taco seasoning and you use 50% more, if you like turkey, then maybe you can just use a normal amount. But if you use 50% more, so like usually one packet of taco seasoning goes with pound of ground beef.
Mhm.
So I do 1 pound of ground turkey and then I use 1.5 packets of taco seasoning. It does not taste like turkey. It tastes like
There
ground
you
beef.
go.
It tastes like taco meat. It is delicious. So I
Mhm.
have started you making chili rellenos, and you can either use poblano peppers or I actually prefer Anaheim peppers, just because I think they keep a little bit better and they're slightly larger. There's opinions about the heat. I like heat. I can take it. You can do either way. Anaheim peppers technically are a little bit less heat, but it doesn't matter to me. Um, so what you can do is basically I make this ground beef or ground turkey with the taco seasoning. Sometimes if I have it and I'm like interested in like sprucing it up, I might put some onions, I might put some um mushrooms, I might put some, like I may put some like peppers and extra things in there. If I don't have them, then I might take like a can of Rotel or like if I have a can of green chilies, I might toss them in there. Whatever I just happen to have on hand. I usually
Mhm.
don't do a lot of like forethought with my cooking. So anyway, so I just do make the ground beef, put whatever whatever in there I'm going to. Sometimes it's nothing, sometimes it's just straight ground beef. Um, and then I usually do like at least a little bit of tomato something just to give it a little bit of extra juice and a little bit extra flavor. And then I just stuff so I bake or roast the Anaheim peppers just to get them a little bit soft and a little bit wilty and a little bit get a little bit of that char on the surface. And then I stuff them with the ground beef and then that's my meal prep. That's like 8 lunches for the next, when I'm taking them to work. And
Mhm.
then when it's ready to, when it's time to have lunch, I just sprinkle a little bit of shredded cheese on the top and then cook them. We can talk later about the different options to cook them. And it is a delicious, delicious lunch, and it's super high protein. And one thing that I am kind of really obsessed with right now is y'all know that on this podcast we're not really calorie focused. But one thing that I have been trying to do is make sure that my protein to calorie ratio is high.
Mhm.
Um, and so like I'm a little more lenient on the calories if my protein is really high. And so this is like a super high punch ratio of calories to protein in this dish, and it's so delicious. And it is like one of my favorite lunches that I'm obsessed with right now. And it's
And
super easy. So,
your ratio is better with the ground turkey compared to the ground beef,
absolutely.
even though you can use both
Absolutely.
or either. Yeah. Okay. Fabulous. That sounds super yummy. I was gonna say, let's talk a little bit about the protein differences real quick. If we're talking maybe 90% ground beef, I think after it's cooked and you weigh out maybe 4 ounces, it's gonna give you about 30 grams of protein. The
Mhm.
turkey, about 4 ounces after being cooked and everything, is about 21 grams. So, but again, your calories and the fat in the turkey is going to be much lower. And so, if you're really trying to, let's say, shred, or you have a competition coming up and you're wanting to get that higher protein with less fat, less calories, less stuffing, look into ground turkey. Absolutely use your seasonings and spices. And then you can always do maybe even half and half ground beef, have ground turkey, do all ground turkey if you're like Dr. Sarah and you can hide it with you don't like the taste, right? But you're hiding it with seasoning or, stuff like that. So
And is
absolutely.
that dependent on the type of ground beef that you buy? Because maybe I buy shitty ground beef because I have found, because I tend to buy the higher fat one just because I like it to be moist. And I have not been able to have that good of a ratio when I have done ground beef in that way. But maybe that's because of the ones that I'm buying.
It is.
'Cause like often when it cooks down, I end up with definitely less than 30. And is a higher calorie content. But maybe
Yes.
that's because of what I'm buying.
Yes. So you're going to lose. I too like the higher fat ground
Mhm.
beef just because it's just
Yeah,
flavor, right? And when I'm
exactly.
doing that, and I'm not necessarily looking at fat, but what you lose in that the ratio, if you will, with that higher fat content is lower protein. And so that's
Yeah,
when a lot of people will talk about the lean proteins. And so if you
yeah,
go to 98% lean and it's only 2% fat, then you're going to increase your protein and remove that fat and your ratios get a little bit better. But
makes
again,
sense.
you're going to lose
Yeah.
a little bit of that flavor, but that's what we're using spices for and other stuff.
I
So
was
it
gonna say,
really
if you
kind of
put
depends
taco
on,
seasoning, does it really matter? Like,
yep, yep.
mm,
Um, but yeah, so ground beef, I also love ground bison. So you're roughly getting the same
yes.
thing. Ground bison tends to be a
Yep.
little bit leaner, right?
Yep. Absolutely.
Than beef.
And it's
And
delicious also.
yeah, and it might be harder to find.
And
So
it's
your
good.
local place might not have it. But a lot of people will, when they think protein, they're thinking chicken.
Yeah.
So in America, we eat a lot of chicken.
Yeah.
And if you were to bake, let's say, or make chicken breast, your skinless chicken breast cooked, 3.5 ounces will get you 30 grams of protein.
That's awesome.
So you're like, that's awesome. How am I going to use this chicken breast? Throw it on a salad. My favorite, I'm into wraps right now, and including lettuce wraps. And so then you
Yeah.
can chop it up. You're making whatever you want. And then I'm going to roll it into a lettuce wrap. If I'm not watching my carbs, I'm doing a tortilla wrap, right? All kind of stuff. But 3.5 ounces of cooked chicken already is easy to put into whatever lunch or dinner you're having. The cooked thighs are roughly the same, except you need about 4 ounces to get your 30 grams. So just a little bit more, but the thighs have that higher fat ratio compared to the breast. I think they're tastier, right? And so
I like
that's why
them
you
too.
need
That's what I
just a little
prefer.
bit more. Huh?
That's what I prefer too. I don't like the I if for in order for me to eat a chicken breast, it has to be like a lot of juice and a lot of stuff on it, sauce, whatever, because I just
Yep.
don't like that squeaky in my teeth chicken
Yep.
breast.
Yep.
But I also
Absolutely.
really love chicken thighs. I think this is a common thing that we like high fat.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, listen, it's just
Flavor.
not worth it because
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
remove the fat,
yeah,
you're removing the flavor and the enjoyment out of it. And then I find myself smothering this
yeah,
chicken breast with whatever. And
yeah.
that tends to also not be
Mayo,
good,
exactly, exactly.
right?
While you're talking about the wraps, I haven't tried this yet, but I saw this really cool clip on Instagram where basically they were making a wrap. They took an egg, they took some cottage cheese, and they took some spinach and they blended it all up and then did it out really, 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 really flat, like
Ooh.
or spread really, really thin and baked it like on a silicone like baking sheet or whatever
Mhm, mhm.
and super thin. I can't remember how long they baked it, but people can look it up. And it apparently is like a delicious wrap. Like you can use it for other things, and that's
Yes.
gonna have high protein.
Hmm.
Um,
Absolutely.
and like the
And
cottage
that's,
cheese and the spinach kind of takes away that eggy taste, and it's
yep.
like pretty very bland. So
Yes. That is, I love that idea of doing a homemade because I've seen those egg wraps at the grocery
yeah,
store and they're quite expensive, right? And you
yeah,
only get like four in a package or whatever.
yeah,
So it's cool for the convenience.
yeah,
So that's something we also have to measure is like, how much do I want a grab and go and just wrap this up and I don't have to make it? Or how much do I now start learning once I like the taste, can I do it myself? Can I do it for
yeah,
less expensive? Can I make it bigger, bulkier because I have a larger family and I'm going to make more all at once, etc. So
absolutely.
another group, because we talked a little bit of that, the red meat, right?
Mhm.
Um, pork chops. I know a lot of people locally. I'm in the Midwest, and they eat a lot of that. About 4 ounces of that is going to give you another 30 grams of protein, so that's fantastic. Strip I don't know why I'm thinking about a New York strip steak, but steak in general, about 4.5 ounces is going to give you 30 grams of protein. I prefer a ribeye, again, that higher protein and it's tastier to me, but look
Agree.
for those different cuts depending on what ratio you're trying to hit, or are
Yeah,
you trying to stay to the leaner, right, cuts of meat? Another source though is seafood. I am huge into seafood. What do you think about
love it,
seafood?
especially
Okay.
shrimp. I could eat it 4 meals a day. I actually love shrimp and eggs, which I know most people think that sounds so gross,
No, it's
but it's
so
like
good.
it's so good. It's one of my favorite dishes.
Mhm,
So I love shrimp. I love lots of seafood, but shrimp is like my go-to. I love shrimp-based ceviche. Like, oh, it's and
mhm,
ceviche is like another option. I don't make it myself, but if you're like into that, you could make it, and that would be super awesome. But ceviche is one of those things that it's often an appetizer menu or an appetizer item at restaurants, which means it's a little bit less expensive. I mean, it's still ceviche. It's not cheap,
mhm, mhm.
but it's not like buying like a dinner meal. And so that's one thing that I found that you can, if you want, if you're willing to, you can go get that to go. Then that way you have it at home and it's like a high protein. And it's typically it tends to be low calorie because it's got, you know, lots of vegetables and stuff like that in it. And not a whole lot of higher fat things. And so that's something that is like a really great snack to have
Mhm.
on hand, high protein to calorie ratio.
I love ceviche, and I find that I'm
Okay.
full because it's so high
Yes.
protein on a
Yes.
smaller amount, and I'm
Yes.
saving money, right?
Absolutely.
Um, the other thing a lot of people will do is salmon, right? So
Yeah.
salmon's a really big, lots of great vitamins in salmon, omega 3s. Make sure that they are, I prefer wild caught as opposed to farm raised, but salmon, about, I think the amount was 4.5 ounces of cooked salmon was about 35 grams of protein. So fantastic. And a lot of people, once you start measuring out 4.5, you're like, oh, I can eat more than that.
Yeah.
Absolutely, do more.
That's
And maybe
that's
you're
the
hitting
exact
60 grams, right?
exactly, that is the exact point that I was just about to say. I think I don't know anyone that has, like, a serving that's, like, less than 6 ounces. I mean, that's pretty typical.
Right,
So
right. And so then if you're like, "Oh, I'm making that bare
nice.
minimums,
Yeah,
everything else is gravy," right? You're like, "Yeah, add on more." I
yeah,
hit my at least 100 grams of protein. There's
yeah,
no saying that you can't go over that.
absolutely.
And especially if you're still finding yourself hungry
Yeah,
or snackish or like, "Oh my gosh, I'm still having sugar cravings," or whatever it is, have I been meeting my protein goals? Probably not. I got to eat more. The protein is absolutely going to help you stay satiated so you're not as snacky, you're full throughout the day, and it prevents those crashes, right?
yeah.
From blood sugar crashes or whatever.
And I have the other thing that I have found when I increase my protein, so I think we talked about this previously. I try to go above 100. I think 100 should be our bare minimum
Mhm.
for, you know, especially for our women in our audience. But I have found this is not like a day-to-day thing, but on average, when I am at a higher protein, like if I'm shooting for 150, I notice that my energy levels are so much better. So
Mhm.
this isn't like okay, I'm going to eat a high protein lunch and then expect my energy to be better this afternoon. Like this is like a moving average. And if my moving average is a little bit improved, my satiation is better and I feel like I have better energy levels.
Mhm.
So if you're struggling with fatigue, if you're struggling with workouts, that's something that maybe to consider. And you know, if you get your 30 grams at breakfast, if you get your 30 to 40 grams at lunch, and these are just like one item in your meal, like there are
Right.
other things that you can put with them. And then you do 40 to 60 at dinner, you are like you're knocking it out of the park. So, you know, this is very doable, but you just can't wait until like 2 o'clock in the afternoon to be like, oh, I have had zero
Right.
protein today. Um, so if that's something that you're shooting for, these are some really, really fantastic, amazing ways to get that goals.
Yes, and for if we still have any watchers that are vegan or vegetarian, right? Because we
Oh,
might have
true.
lost them from the previous episodes,
Yeah.
but if they're still around, I do want to mention, and for everyone, because they're fabulous to add in, black beans, right? One
Absolutely.
cup of black beans, about 15 grams of protein. And then I also love, especially when I'm going out to like have Japanese or sushi, is edamame, right? And so that is going to be a steamed soybean that for each cup, you're going to get about a little bit more. I think it's 18 and a half grams per cup of edamame. So absolutely what Dr. Sarah was saying was like, these are just little small portions you can add, but imagine if you add more protein, right? And so now I'm having some, uh, a rice bowl with I don't know, steak and black beans. And do I want it to turn Mexican? And do I want it to add avocado and add cilantro? Right. And now I get all excited because I can do all sorts. But then you
Well,
just
and
switch it.
another meal prep thing that we didn't talk about, but it's another one of my favorites is I make huevos rancheros. which is basically black beans with, some tomatoes and all the cilantro and all the sauces that you love. And
Mhm.
then you just crack some eggs on it and you bake it. And it is so freaking delicious. So there you've got, say you put 2 eggs in there, there's your protein plus all of those black beans. That's really like, I mean, there's a 30-gram meal right there.
Yep.
And so this is some way that we can like really increase our protein if you don't want to have a whole bunch of meat. Obviously, eggs are still animal based, so maybe not okay for our vegan friends, but there are many vegetarians that are okay with,
Mhm.
our vegetarians that are okay with eggs. That's another really great source. In the same kind of pseudo family of black beans, another really great source, vegetarian source of protein is lentils.
Yes.
So that's another really fantastic. Um,
Mhm.
go- and there's a lot of things that you can do with lentils that aren't like eating lentils. Like,
Right, right.
so, I used to make a pizza. I mean, used to. I still do. I just haven't done it in a long time. I make a pizza crust out of lentils that basically you
Ooh.
blend them up. Yeah, you blend them up really, 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 like in a food processor till they're like
Mhm.
completely gone, and it makes this like um batter kind of a thing. And there's like you can add like, or you're supposed to add oregano and some spices and stuff to it. And it makes a really, really delicious pizza crust. It's a little bit labor intensive, so like I said, I haven't done it in a long time, but it is delicious. And it's
Mm.
a like a very low carb, non-wheat based carb. That's a pizza crust, and then you can throw whatever say you wanted like a chicken barbecue pizza, that would be a really fantastic high protein option. So
Absolutely. And so speaking of that, I've been seeing a lot more recently on TikTok, which is really exciting. People making pizza crust out of chicken breast. And so again,
also,
more labor intensive because it's
yeah,
shredded chicken and you're making it, but then they put in, or on the top is going to be basically Caesar salad. And as they eat it, it's a chicken Caesar salad in a pizza form. And like,
that
I'm
is
just so
delicious.
excited for people making and
Yeah,
sharing all these fun recipes.
yeah, absolutely.
But
That's awesome.
so we went through a lot of protein ideas today, and now I'm hungry. So I'm gonna go have
Same.
myself a
Same.
protein thing. So actually, while I'm looking at it, one of my favorite snacks is dried squid. And talk
What?
about
Tell me
high
about this.
protein.
I've never had this.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yeah.
so I love it because I go to my local Asian market and it's in the snack aisle
Okay.
and you can flavor it, you can have it unflavored, you can put spicy. I like the really spicy stuff. And it
Uh-huh.
comes in little strings, and I'll pick one up just so you guys can see it real quick. Um, and I'll put it in front of me. So this is basically just dried, shredded squid, and then they put things, but it's talk about high protein, right? And
I
I
can
just
imagine.
eat it. And so when I'm like a little peckish or it's not yet time for a dinner or something, I'm going to snack on this high protein. It really fills that gap. So I'm no longer peckish because of the high protein. And I'm not going towards chips or carbs because that tends to be my thing, right? Is like I want a little peckish, I want a little nosh, I want a little something. And so then I said, okay, instead of buying this because I get highly inflamed with all the carbs that this side of my brain wants to be eating. And
Yes.
so instead I go to my high protein stuff. But that's a lot of fun too. We could even talk about
I'm gonna
canned
try that.
fish, right? And so canned fish, I brought up tuna, but a lot of people love the sardines and the clams and the mussels you can get. That's really easy to like travel with because it
Yeah.
comes in cans. The only caveat is just to be careful with tin itself, right? And so I make sure that I'm balancing the amount of food I'm getting out of the tin cans and other sources, but that's in life in general, right? Just make sure it's all balanced and have at it and use it when you need it.
Yeah. These are
But
really, really great options, and I am hungry, and I'm excited to try out some of these options, and hopefully our audiences as well.
so excellent. So you guys leave below questions, comments about your high protein snacks
Your
and what
favorites.
recipes, right, you want to share with us because we are, I don't know,
Always
I need
looking.
more options. I'm always looking for new stuff to explore and do, especially the grab and go. So share your favorites below, and we'll see you guys next time.